And I think we are live here to chat about kind of a bunch of TV. I feel like now that we've hit this fall season, and you know it's fall because I've got a berry lip and I'm wearing flannel. That's the only way to know. Now that we've hit this fall season, TV is back. Do you guys feel the same? Have you found yourself watching more things, or like do you feel like more things are kind of on your radar of the shows you usually watch?
Yes, because my YouTube TV queue is getting full and I'm missing things. So yes, it feels like full swing for sure.
Well, relatedly, I feel like there are some news items that we should touch on as well. So, what have you guys been seeing in terms of news items for I guess the last 2 weeks that we should touch on?
Yeah, so
Oh,
I've
well,
seen.
okay.
I actually missed this, and I can't believe I missed this. Sorry, Carey.
You're good.
Uh, and then also me and me and Cammie are really excited that the Miss Scarlet and the Duke is back on Master PBS.
I'm so excited about Miss Scarlet and the Duke being back. I remember it, and it was like all coming back to me today because, it's been forever since season one, it feels like. But I remember back in season one being like, Kate, this is genuinely one of the best shows that I've watched like all year. I was just so, so excited. And then you'll recall maybe like 6 months ago, it started airing on like British television or something else. I don't remember what, but it wasn't like available in the US yet. And I was like, I'm going to be good, and I'm not going to find the like illegal streaming episodes online. I'm going to wait till it's actually available. And I actually did it. Like for once in my life, I actually stuck with what I said. I think it just became available this week. Kate, correct me if I'm wrong. So this weekend, diving into episodes one and two. But today, Kate is also going to talk through her initial reaction to episodes one and two, which is what's out so far as well. So excited. We're going to try to get Carey on board as well. Carey, anything on your radar?
Um, Two of my favorite shows won Saturn Awards recently. Superman and Lois, I think, for I want to say like best sci-fi or action adventure show from the Saturn Awards, and Brett Basinger or Basinger, I don't know how she pronounces it,
Me neither.
won yeah, best young actress. So that's really nice to see shows and people I appreciate receive awards. Um, and also depending on how you feel about, I think it's James Gunn. I always get those confused, James Gunn, Sean Gunn, whatever.
Wasn't he like a
The one who
super
did.
controversial director? And for the life of me, I don't remember why.
Well, it's some old tweets of his or opinions of his that sort of surfaced, and and they sort of dropped him from like Guardians of the Galaxy, and then they said that was probably a mistake and brought him back. But long story short, apparently he's going to be sort of like the main engine behind DC films going forward. So that's interesting and exciting. So we'll see how that turns out. Um, I think that's about all that I might have. Something might pop into my head later, but that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I was trying to like go back through my notes today of like what have I been excited about? Like the new Anya Taylor Joy movies coming up, and I think they released a new trailer for that. Um, there's a bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about today because it's currently airing. Like Love Is Blind on Netflix dropped. I think this is the one show that I think almost everybody in the world is watching right now and has like super strong opinions about, myself included. Like there's a bunch of stuff that's either currently releasing or going to release soon. But in terms of like movies, it's a lot of the same ones that we talked about. So I think we should dive into a finale that occurred right after our last live, which was She Hulk. So and if you haven't noticed, little technical difficulties behind the scene getting Kate in here. So while I kind of play with those, puppet strings, something like that, to try to get Kate back from the ether, tell me what you thought of the She-Hulk finale.
It was, you know what? I would like to say that I probably needed to watch it twice, but to be honest, nope. It was totally, completely, and utterly bonkers, right?
So
Um,
crazy.
yeah, because again, where they were going, you just had this whole feeling of what Marvel always does. It's like, hey, this is the finale, so we have to bring in the villain that is essentially just like our hero, just a sort of a mirror opposite of it, right? So we thought we were going down that um, trap, and then of course it was about to be the big CGI fest where you bring in everyone for this exciting finale, third act sort of deal, and then it was like, no, we're not going to do that. And and so this is probably one of the few shows that Marvel has, the MCU has, that could sort of just say, you know what, we're not going to do it. We're going to go off the rail. And they did, which was refreshing in one sense. And also, it was totally in line with who this character is and her comic origin. So, yeah, that was freaking cool.
I thought it was so cool, and it stopped me from being able to give my most common Marvel complaint, which is that they don't take risks and it's all a formula, whatever. And to an extent, this wasn't a huge risk, okay? Like it was in line with the tone of the rest of the season, but it was a very, very bonkers, off the rail finale. This was the type of risk I would have expected them to maybe make on like a third or fourth episode where they do something super like meta and weird or whatever, and then like proceed with the season and don't necessarily like dive into that level of meta again. But to do that for the finale, to kind of subvert the like over the top expectations of some big like battle, whatever, I thought it was so cool. I thought it was so cool. The commentary was on point. The dialogue did not get boring. It didn't, to me, it didn't get like cheesy in a weird way. It was great.
It was, I will say this, it was initially it was shocking and jarring, and obviously that was the intention, right? And I was like, and the thought is like, where is this going to go? And that's sort of what you sort of want in a show like this. It's like you want to catch people off guard, right? Because we're all conditioned to expect what we always get, and then they were like, nope, you're not getting that here. And sort of like hearing the story behind the scenes of how they decided to come to this, because if you believe what the writers and producers and directors said, they were sort of going into this thinking they were going to do the sort of Marvel finale that we always get. And Kevin Feige, to his credit, said, what are you doing here? You don't need to go that route."
Mhm.
Um, so, like I said, if you believe what they say, then that's refreshing. Of course, it could be part of the entire machine that says, well, this is what we intended all along, and then we're going to make you feel good about it, right? So, either way, I was happy with it.
Well, that's what's so fun is it like sets itself up for us to be able to theorize about it as part of our critiques, and it got people talking. Like it up until the finale, I think I'd seen people comment on it on Twitter, but a lot of times it wasn't exactly the second it dropped, which guilty. I didn't always watch the episodes, like within 24 hours of drop. So I saw a lot of like people watching it on the weekend or, a lot of like 48 plus whatever hour late. I don't need not to not to talk in Nelson terms, but just like a little bit of a delay there in people watching it and just not huge buzz. But with the finale, I saw a lot of pretty quick buzz and a lot of intense buzz and a lot of like theorizing and like how do we feel about this type of stuff, which is exactly what you want. I thought it was also cool because it sets us up to have no idea what season 2 would even look like. Whatever direction of meta they choose to go with season 2, we can't assume it's going to look exactly like the Marvel formula. We can assume it might be a commentary on the Marvel formula in a way, like, and that's kind of fun. Speaking
Yeah.
of theorizing, Kate, you still haven't watched She-Hulk, have you? I'm really curious about how you would react to the finale in particular, but the whole
I have,
season. This is also me testing if
yeah,
Kate's tech
yeah, I
works.
haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Okay. So here are things we know. We know Kate hasn't watched it yet, and we know there's like approximately a 15-second delay and it's frozen and I can't hear the audio very well. That's a lot of information to have gained. I feel good about that. Okay. So, Carey, tell me what you expect to see in season 2, despite the fact that we just said, like, we can't really, we have to expect the unexpected. We don't really know what season 2 is going to look like.
Well, I guess the more important thing is, are we going to see She-Hulk before her season 2 starts, right? Is she
Yes,
going to show up?
please.
Is she going to, yeah, is she going to show up in, say, Daredevil, or is she might pop up in somebody else's movie? And I bring those things up to say that not what happens there will inform the story that she tells in season 2, but it will be important to sort of figure out how they put her in a story where she has broken you. I mean, to say that she's a fourth wall breaker is like, I mean, really she's like fifth and sixth and seventh wall,
Right.
right? So how they choose to tell stories with her in it will say a lot about what her season 2 would be like. So I can't really guess what that would be because there's so much that's open in terms of storytelling and what stories they want to tell with her. Because again, it looks like at the very end she's in this place where she's like she knows what she wants to do, right? Like like Daredevil said, and not to say that she got the idea from him, but basically it's, hey, I'm in a position where I can fight in court for the good guy or against the bad guy, and when the courts can't help, then She-Hulk can step in. So she has a clear path for what she wants to do and how she can do it. So it's just a matter of what sort of message they want to send. So it's almost wide open.
Okay, I have a really, I guess, I wouldn't say like a hypocritical question, maybe a leading question. I really like her connection with Daredevil. I think they've got fabulous chemistry. I think their characters make sense. I think it's very fun. I never watched this show, but I really liked it. However, and I asked this not knowing like the vibe of his show that much, is she too meta to really be a present character on another character's show? Like I could like if she showed up in WandaVision, for example, which if anything's gonna fix Kate's technology, saying WandaVision should do it. If she showed up in WandaVision, I feel like it could kind of break the show because what she can do in her show, not like her powers, but like the meta addressing the audience type of vibe, feels like it would break that show. And it would certainly break, like, for example, Falcon Winter Soldier, something like that. Like, there's just certain places where you can't bring that level of like meta analysis. Is Daredevil somewhere she could?
Well, to your point, I think it's sort of like two sort of different things. It's like, and to be honest, I'm familiar with Daredevil, but I did not watch his show. My concern with Daredevil is not so much that she would sort of be like, sort of like take you out of the element of a show by fourth wall breaking. My issue with putting her in Daredevil too much is that primarily the issues and things that he's going to be dealing with, she could take care of like that, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
the threat levels, for the most part, the goons and the henchmen and that sort of thing, that makes him so visceral and street level, bringing in She-Hulk sort of removes that. So I don't know how well that works. Um, to your point about, is she too meta for that? Probably. And so that was sort of my whole thought about who do you pair her with where you could tell a good story and sort of still do what she does, but not to the point that it takes away from whoever the main character, whoever show she comes into, or takes away from their sort of what they're trying to do with their story, right? Um, so that's why I'm thinking it'll be important where she shows up next. If it's just in her next show, then it's sort of wide open, right? But if I'm trying to think it would make sense for her to sort of pair with in
Mhm.
terms of what Marvel's. I could see her showing up in something like Ant-Man. That would
Yeah.
be sort of like an interesting place for her to show up. Um,
Or
uh,
what's
Loki.
the notable Marvel R-rated movie sequence? I think also starts with a
Um,
D. I'm forgetting.
uh, wait, is it you talking about a Disney Plus show or we wait?
Mm-mm. No, movie.
Um,
Never mind.
well,
I might be thinking of DC.
okay. I
No,
could
I'm
see
thinking
her.
of Marvel. Played by Ryan Reynolds or something like that.
Oh, Daredevil. I meant
Daredevil.
Deadpool.
Yes.
No, 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 no. Deadpool. Deadpool.
Deadpool.
Deadpool. Yes.
Yes. Deadpool. I knew there was a
Yes.
double sequential
Yes.
vowel in there, and for the life of me,
Yes.
I couldn't get my mind off of like a double E in some way. Anyways, go
Yeah.
ahead.
She would no. She would certainly make sense in Deadpool.
Mhm.
It's just a question of how much is too much. Um, I think she could have show up in Loki now and then, like because obviously his fear of the Hulk would be incredibly interesting, having to deal with She-Hulk. I think that could be fun. So I think those are places where she could show up, and the story could remain true to what those shows try to do, and she could still add what she brings. Um, but yeah, there's just so many possibilities and so many opportunities.
I think that she, as a character, would mesh well with people. Her limiting factor is that her like actual powers, like you said, can be OP in certain situations. Like she would be able to easily handle a situation that others would not. So she could kind of like show up a hero on his or her own territory. The other thing is just how meta she is. Unless they take some of that away and like she's on another show, but she can't, break the fourth, fifth, whatever wall, and we're just supposed to believe that. Like that's my concern with moving her around. Okay, we must have looked in the mirror and mentioned WandaVision 3 times because we've healed, I think, Kate's technology. You've never looked clearer. You've never looked smaller, but you've also never looked clearer.
Yeah, the difference of my laptop and my Pixel phone is
Oh,
probably the
that'll do
difference. But you guys are also tiny, tiny on my phone.
it. Well, we did talk about Ant-Man, so the size
Okay.
shrinkage is part of it. So we were talking about your thoughts on She-Hulk, and you haven't watched it yet, but there is a lot of like meta elements in it where she'll like address the camera, break the fourth wall, break what Carrie's calling the fifth wall, which is like also addressing the mechanisms behind the creation of Marvel shows. And
Mm-hmm.
I referenced WandaVision as an example of a show I don't think they could put her on because I think that would break a show like that. But I'm interested for you to watch She-Hulk and kind of analyze where they could or could not use this ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because at least with the what WandaVision, it sometimes it broke the fourth wall, and sometimes it built a third wall almost,
Yeah.
where it's like it's so in its own way, and it could do such a mechanically specific thing because of the it's all a dream, it's all hoax type situation, and so you could get around with breaking storytelling rules that are previously established. And I'm glad that they're trying to break the bounds, so it seems, with other people and other stories in different ways that are a little less contrived within the mechanics of the story. But yeah, it does raise the question: where can they put other people when they start to give their own production of their story? It's a character of its own.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. A conversation between her and Wanda would be fantastic. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it also, in a way, maybe not. They are in very different stages of like life and loss. So, but anyways, speaking of breaking the fourth wall, our thumbnail does that. We have a character looking directly into the screen, and spoilers, that is the final shot of the final scene of House of the Dragon season 1. Either of you been watching that before I spoil it even more than I already did?
Not yet. It's on my
Haven't
list.
watched it, but spoil away, as Loki would say.
Okay, twist my arm. So I found that to be another really great example of subverting finale expectations. And I'm not going to spoil like well, I mean, maybe this is spoiling major plot points. I don't know. But what I'm going to tell you is what they did in the finale was actually loosely similar to what She-Hulk did in her finale, only in the sense that they subverted your expectations of a huge battle. So 10 episode season, ninth episode, we get to see basically the Green Queen preparing for battle. 10th episode, we get to see the Black Queen preparing for battle. The whole shows, there's two sides. There's the Greens, they're like the traditionalists, the religious ones. The Blacks, they're the ones who have dragons. They're the ones who currently have possession of the throne. So we have the Greens versus the Blacks, and that's like the whole setup of the whole season. It's very odd terminology, but that's the terminology. So here we are, and we're working with it. Okay, so episode 9, we have the Green Queen queuing up for battle. That's Alicent. She's the hot redhead. If you've seen memes of her going around, she's great. 10 out of 10, love her. Then we have our thumbnail queen. Also love her. That's Rhaenyra. She's the one that kind of, when you like squint and first look at her, looks like Daenerys from Game of Thrones. It's because she's like her great grandmother or aunt or something like that. I don't really know. Anyways, I didn't watch Game of Thrones, so that doesn't matter to me. Well, I did. I watched the first 2 seasons. Anyways, we see her kind of like gearing up for battle. There's like a ton of really grotesque stuff. But instead of the finale actually ending in like the beginning of a battle or a battle at all, we just see literally their 2 kids. Like, and when I say children, I mean like one of them I think is supposed to be like middle schooler age, fight. It's 2 children. Like, the ultimate battle is not between the 2 queens. The armies aren't geared up and like none of that. We see like a child spat between their 2 sons that, spoilers, ends in one of them dying. And then we see them like now they're like really going to fight a war. It's so interesting.
So wait, what are these middle school kids, age kids dies? I mean, I know what I'm getting into when I see this, but I was hoping you were gonna say they get into a fight and like are like throwing like kitty punches at each other and like someone
He
gets a
literally
black
dies by
eye.
accident. They're trying to like, well, like the other, okay, so they're like fighting, and they're on dragons and they're fighting, and they're older of the 2, who's supposed to be like high school age, is kind of chasing the younger of the 2, and then they both kind of get into this little spat, and they've had like little childish spats before. Anyways, one of the dragons kind of starts to irritate the other dragons. The dragons basically like get pissed about it, and then one of the dragons like eats the other dragon and the boy. Spoilers, but like that's what happens. And like they didn't mean to, like the older boy didn't mean to kill the younger boy. I'm also probably describing this really badly, but to me that's visually the effect.
Mm-hmm.
My question would be, and it's probably evident, right? But so what is the obviously it's a subversion, right? But it's like what are they trying to say by putting this in there, this particular scene, like about the consequences of it, or like how is that the message?
The message we're supposed to get from it is like, now it's not going to be a small war, it's going to be a big war. Because up until this point, it was sort of like a race to see like, okay, who can get their contender for the throne coronated first? Who can get this family or this noble or this royal to kind of side with them? And they're sort of all like building sides. And again, you're gearing up for battle, thinking the battle is going to be in the final episode, or at least it's going to start. And the final episode literally ends before they're even in the same, before the Green Queen and the Black Queen are even in the same like city. It just ends with one of them finding out that her son died. So now like all peace talks and negotiation and let's, sacrifice this for that, whatever, are gone. And now it's going to be like a full out war. It's like setting up for season 2, but they subvert it by not having like a real battle. Like this whole time you're seeing like these 2 kids, like kind of having like a dumb little boy fight, and then one dies It's really intense. I just spoiled the whole season. I'm really sorry, but like it's not a climactic fight. I mean, it's like a tragic fight, but it's not the climactic fight that you expect watching the whole season, watching the and like in the final episode, they have this whole like there's like this war room essentially where they've got this whole like on fire map of the whole land and we've got to take this corner, we got to do like it's just very obviously like you feel like you're gearing up for like a big battle and it's a kid dies. That's the end of the episode.
Wow. So I have two thoughts
Yeah.
about that, or two things I want to say about that, but I didn't want to like step over anyone. So like the first thing I was thinking was like this feels like sort of like a CW situation where it's like we're at the finale, we want it to be great, and oh no, we're out of money, so
No,
we're not going to have this big
literally
climactic
watching
battle.
it, I was like, this a little bit feels like a CW ending. And I don't even mean to be rude. It didn't feel bad quality, but it felt like a low budget. Yeah.
And
That
so yeah, that
almost
was
makes
one
me
aspect.
think. Well, I was just gonna say that CW type ending. Sometimes when they do that, it feels like they wrote it for two possible endings.
Yes.
Whereas if it has to be the only season, like it doesn't look like they're gonna get picked back up, they go for the big like final ending, like the big flashy, like let's go out with a bang. But then if they do get picked up, they're like, oh, we need to kind of save some of these things because we can't kill off every single person just yet. Because like we have to have some characters still in the show. So that's
100%
probably
felt like it was
what
one
happened.
of multiple possible endings. Completely.
But and the other thing is, I have to imagine you're watching it and you see like the time that's left in terms of the episode or whatever the case is, and you're like, they're not going to have enough time to do all this.
Yes.
Uh,
When it got to the point when it was like, okay, so the episodes are like an hour. When it got to the 40-minute mark and we had it like approached a battlefield, like there's still people like inside. I literally was just like, I kept like touching the screen, like, okay, how many minutes are left? Are y'all gonna go outside? Are you gonna travel and get to nope. Or I expected like somebody to make it to their camp. Because again, the two sectors are like in other cities. I thought there would be like a green invasion or something. Nope. So I guess the whole battle will be next season. Anyways, sorry for spoiling it. Watch it anyways. My whole fear this season was that there was going to be a ton of like grotesque Game of Thrones esque like violence, particularly sexualized violence against women. And while there were a lot of like gory, grotesque things throughout this, I would say there wasn't actually a ton of violence against women and there wasn't a ton of sexualized violence against women. And whenever that topic was actually approached, which I'm going to loosely say was maybe like 2 times in the season, it's just not shown in a gratuitous way or like handled in like a traumatizing way. But everybody's going to view that differently, but I was just very ready to like quit after a couple episodes, assuming like, okay, I'm going to kind of watch a few episodes to see what this big phenomenon is going to be about. And then I'm going to quit when I like reach my limit. And I haven't reached my limit yet. I'm sure season 2 will be the one to break me though. Okay. Let's toss it over to you, Carey. Can you tell me about what you watched this week?
Well, I can tell you that as soon as we leave this fantastic hangout, I will be watching the second part of the Stargirl two-parter, Infinity Inc. And so the first episode that aired last week, Infinity Inc. Part One,
Mm-hmm.
it sort of brought to my attention, like slapped me in the face of how I don't want this to sound incredibly critical, but when you're watching a show and they build it up to be a murder mystery, they have not executed the important aspects of a murder mystery incredibly well this season.
Right.
So when we got to this arc and they brought in something new and it's sort of mysterious, it's not a murder mystery, but it's sort of like, what does all this mean? I found myself incredibly interested in it, incredibly intrigued by it, and it sort of just brought sort of into a great focus of what's the first half of the season sort of lacked, right? And that's not a great thing. I'm not to say that the first part of the season wasn't really good. It just wasn't executed well in terms of what they were trying to do. So I'll say all that to say I'm incredibly looking forward to Infinity Inc. Part Two. I think it sets up what the rest of the season's going to be like. But I just wish they had gotten to this point sooner. I mean, what were we, 7 episodes in of a 13 episode run? That's dragging it a little bit, in my opinion.
Hmm. What I'll say, and I'm now caught up on Stargirl, so like you, I'm going to be watching tonight's episode as soon as this is over. I think that they are lucky that their ship that they're toying with right now has good chemistry, because that's really one of the things keeping this last segment, not the whole season, but the last segment of like 3 or 4 episodes. That's the thing kind of keeping it vibrant. The plots, the you know, there was a time when like kind of the side characters were almost carrying the show. Like in season 1, we really liked a lot of the like side characters, both the adult ones and the kid ones. This
Yeah.
season, I don't know. They kind of need to retool some of the way they've plotted them at this point.
Well, I'll just say this. It's the first season in particular, the villains were sort of the more charismatic characters, the more intriguing characters, and that's great for a show because it gives your heroes and protagonists something to bounce off of, right? The problem is that spoiler, they got rid of most of those villains, and in
Yeah.
this season, it's sort of like, hey, we're all sort of frenemies, which is okay, but you've taken away the charismatic and intrigue, and you sort of like uh, you brought forth a sort of a vanilla show.
Yeah.
And when you do a murder mystery, I mean, there's a couple of things you really want to have. You want to have like someone who's investigating this murder mystery that, and we always see it. It's either someone who has quirks, it's someone who's interesting, it's someone you want to see how they work, what their process is in terms of trying to piece this all together. And then you need the sort of aspect of having these things pieced together and fall into place and how they sort of fit together. And those two things we have not really seen in a murder mystery, and that's pretty that's pretty important. So that's my disappointment so far.
Yeah. Especially in, we talked a couple weeks ago in contrast to the execution of murder mystery on Only Murders in the Building, or, some of the spaces like that where kind of I don't know, from a plot perspective, murder mystery as sort of a plot structure is something that's very fun to play with. There should be this sort of deliciousness to it, this intrigue, this looking over your shoulder, this everybody suspecting everybody, that's not played with in a fun way here. And I really think fun is something that should be important in a show like this where you do have a lot of youth. Having them all, kind of have this sort of like, ooh, who could we trust? Who could we not trust? Who could it be? Who has the motive? Who has that I would like to see the level of like fun intrigue heightened a bit, and maybe contrast that intrigue from the younger to the older generation, see how it looks different for younger kids to suspect each other, suspect things, or distrust each other, versus how the adults suspect, distrust, etc. I think that would be kind of interesting and a fun way to play with the generational thing going on in this show.
Agree.
Well, speaking of generation, there's a show you're watching that I have not started watching that I want to hear about. Talk to me about what Miss McNamara is doing these days.
Um, I I have not watched Walker, which is the sort of show that this spins off from. I have no idea what that show is about, but I'm a Cat McNamara fan, right? So I was like, okay, well, let me see what this is about from the very beginning. So I watched the pilot episode, and it's what you would expect from a CW pilot with a bunch of pretty people, even when they're on in the dirty, dusty old west, right? It's like, hey, these are pretty people who never really get dirty, and when they do get dirty, it's Hollywood dirty, right? So
Right.
and so it is what it is.
The
Basically, it did what a
smear
pilot,
across the neck.
yeah, it did what a pilot needed to do. It introduced your characters where their starting points are. and you get a sort of sense for what sort of they're capable of in terms of both good and bad, and sort of the struggles that they're dealing with. Long story short, um, I think it's the fourth episode by now. They have some they have some really fun characters, and they get to sort of play and have fun, even though there is a serious story at the heart of it. So you see this sort of triangle that's formed, and of course the thought is always going to be is that it's going to be a quote unquote love triangle, right? I'm hoping against hope that we don't see it because don't I don't want to say it would ruin the show or it might weigh it down. I just think that they can tell much better stories without going that route. Um,
But
and
they're
so
good.
yeah, they've got the, oh, of course they are. You got a bunch of pretty people, so of course you have to. Um, but they do have like a nice mix of like some secondary characters. And I don't know I won't know names until like maybe season two, right?
Right.
Um, but there's this one woman, she runs like the quote unquote entertainment. She's like basically in charge of that, and she is a firecracker, and she doesn't take any junk from anyone. Real fun character, and we sort of starting to realize that there's more to her than what we see, which is fantastic because what we see is like a really good character anyway. But there's some mystery and intrigue with what she does and what she's about to. So, long story short, it's a fun show. It's a CW show, so you know what you're getting into. Um, but I'm a fan of cats, so I could probably watch her and everything. I would, I guess I would say, would I recommend this to someone who hasn't seen Walker or is, yeah, because I didn't watch it. It doesn't mean anything. So I don't know exactly where her story is supposed to line up in terms of like, hey, you need to hit this point, and this is like I guess I think she's like the grandmother of whoever the main character is on Walker or whatever. So
Okay.
it's not like I have to. It's not like I have to wait till she hits this certain point in the narrative and say, well, she's gotten to where like her story's complete. It's basically an open slate sort of situation, and I dig it, man. It's take me out to the old west in the saloon, people and horses. You know what's really funny about it is because the action pieces, right? You always expect on a show like most modern shows an action pieces. Oh, we're going to have like a martial arts fight or a car
Hmm.
chase or explosives and that sort of thing. It's always funny to see like, hey, we have this action piece and this guy who jumps on a horse and takes off around the corner, right? So it's like it's practical stuff, but it's also period effective, and that's
Hmm.
sometimes that's just fun to see too, right? So I dig it.
Well, I might give it a shot. Kate, have you tried watching it?
Not yet. I don't think that's on my list, but I have seen things about it, and they do look very pretty.
They do. And here's the thing. You guys know I hate a love triangle, but I've heard the love triangle on this is kind of like interesting and good. Do you have like a
Mhm.
side? Are we going to need to pick sides?
I don't know that. Well, if, of course, people are going to pick sides. Um,
It's not like
it's
brothers, right? I hate
No, no,
sibling
no.
love triangles.
In fact, no. And it's funny because they're sort of like polar opposites, right? You have
Okay.
like the rogue scoundrel who's basically sort of like the Han Solo type, right? And then you have the other guy who's a Native American who's sort of torn between caring for his people and sort of being sort of, for lack of a better way of saying it, a tool that the people in this town use when they sort of need to track people. It's like, hey, we tolerate him because we know he can help us when we do these things. So he's torn between those two worlds. Um, I'm trying to think of like who's a sort of like a popular sort of character stereotype you would. I don't want to say Tonto because that sounds like that doesn't sound effective either. But you know the sort of character that I'm talking about. It's
I
like, hey,
do.
I'm torn between. It would probably be like, and I hate to bring Twilight up, but it would sort of be like Jacob was the werewolf, right?
Hmm.
Or I forget. Yeah. So it's that sort of character is who you have
Gotcha.
here, and yeah, yeah.
I may need to watch it just so I can pick sides. It's been so long since I've been involved in a toxic love triangle where I have a side to root for. And this seems low stakes because I don't like invest in like country western shows. So, how mad could I really get? Flash forward.
Well,
Very mad.
the last thing I'll say, if this makes you feel any better, at least the two guys have starting to develop a begrudging respect for each other, right? So at least you don't have them at opposing ends because it's like, hey, I want her and I know you want her, and so they're not button heads yet, but we know it's probably going to get there eventually.
Delicious. Well, speaking of people butting heads, Kate, talk to us about the show that has returned.
So, the great, wonderful show of Miss Scarlet and the Duke has come back. It was on showing in the UK a few months ago, and we are now going to be able to watch it on Masterpiece this season. I'm very glad I checked this morning. Actually, it came to my thoughts, and so you got to kind of stay on top of it with PBS. You got to watch it pretty much as soon as it comes out. But yeah, we're very excited about that, and to kind of talk about toxic relationships and stuff like that. It's one of the few times that I think both Cammie and I had gone, why do we like this? This is not our thing. This is not what we would normally be on board with. They're awful to each other. It's past just like Darcy Lizzie type enemies to lovers. They hate each other. They are awful towards each other, and
Yeah.
I love it.
It's so good. They fight.
Yeah.
They're not respectful or
No.
nice or what. I mean, like
They
occasionally
blame.
they'll show like a drop of softness and tenderness to each other, and then that has to tide you over for like 2 whole episodes.
Yes. It is not only enemies to lovers, but it's so enemies to lovers that it's also, I guess, technically slow burn, but their chemistry is on fire, so it doesn't count that way.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they squabble, they argue. It's ridiculous. The puzzles are like, their crimes are so easy to solve, and yet they can't see what's right in front of them, and then they blame each other for messing things up. It's lovely.
Chef's
So,
kiss. They kind of carry the energy of like bickering grandparents who low key love each other, but like bicker in front of people for entertainment.
yes. Because like there are almost moments where when they're truly alone, that they're much softer with each other. But when anybody else is in front of them at all, they're like children fighting each other. Yes.
And so, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So, are they like competing like professionals, like whatever it is, or investigators? Is that what it is? So they're not working together. They're like doing the same work.
Like a
Just
private
is that the
detective
deal?
and a cop detective
Okay.
ish.
Yeah.
And he's like the follow the rules. He's like the official detective. And then she's like the private investigator who gets to like break the rules or use the fact that she's like a woman or whatever to like get into places he can't get into. It's so great. Just a direct shot of serotonin straight into your veins.
Yeah.
Are you guys too young to remember like Remington Steele and like Moonlighting and those type shows? Because that's sort of the vibe I get from
I
hearing
mean,
this
I've heard the
description.
names, but I don't know anything about them.
Well, particularly Moonlighting. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, particularly Moonlighting was obviously these two characters who worked together and had sort of this running sort of they weren't nasty to each other, but they were coming from two different worlds and they butted heads a lot, but we could see where this was going. And so here's the other question I have, not to be taking all this up, but you said that they're sort of like enemies to lovers, or at least that's what the expectation is, perhaps where it goes. But it's not, is it a situation where it's dangerous, like to root for that relationship, as in, no, this is too bad, girl, leave him alone, or he should leave her alone?
They're both equally toxic. They're both equally. So it's almost, I think part of why or at least I have resistance towards the really awful dark romances like this that are enemies to lovers is because a lot of times they frame one person as the good person and they're doing right to the point of being a little insufferable sometimes, and then the other person's just morally wrong all the time. Have good intentions most of the time, but they are so terrible to each other constantly, even though they're both trying to be on the right side of the law the whole time and trying to actually save people. So they have good hearts, but it's something about being in the room with the other person that just turns them into a brutal, ruthless, calloused human being, and it's amazing to see.
Yeah, like it's okay. Here's the thing. A lot of times when you have like a romance, like a period romance, and this is like a detective show with a side of romance, but like a healthy side of romance to where like I'm not complaining. I mean, I will complain, like I want more, but whatever. It's a detective show first. But a lot of times when you have like a romance that is a period romance in a Victorian setting, it's exactly the kind of thing that women are like, guys say that they don't know what women want, but there's like 5,000 paper book romance novels detailing the entire road book of exactly what women want, whatever. And you start this show and you think it might be like that kind of show of like the detailed slow burn guide of like how to be a Mr. Darcy, as if there aren't like enough like books detailing that. This is not that. Don't follow this formula, neither from the guy's side nor the girl's side. This is not the romance that like teaches you how to treat your partner, but it's also not like to the point where like people are gonna be like, this is abusive, this is bad, like it's toxic, but it's not
They
like
argue and are combative, but it's not like they're emotionally manipulating their best friends into whatever, what have you. They're not narcissistic in the tendencies of loitering things over. There's not even really a power dynamic, except for the fact that he has like police detectives, so he has more resources, and so she has to ask for resources. But it's not even really that problem either. So it takes a lot of what typically comes out of really bad enemies to lovers, and it leaves a lot of the heat that's there, but without any of the actual sting.
Yes. 100 out of 10, no notes. It's so
Sounds
good.
interesting.
My deepest thanks to Kate for number one, introducing me to this show, just immaculate. And number two, for reminding me that season 2 exists, because that is going to highly improve my weekend. We are at time, even though I know I've watched more this week. I know both of you have watched more this week, but that's just going to give us some more to chat about in the future. How about you both take us out with a recommendation? What should we be watching this week?
I have you should read this week.
Oh, that sounds even healthier. Go ahead.
Okay, so before today, it would have been Elantris. That's a fantasy sci-fi novel I read. I really liked it. It's by Brandon Sanderson, kind of one of the stable guys in fantasy right now. Highly recommend. But what I'm going to come out and say is I thought I was going to get another Miss Scarlet and the Duke novel today about Victorian murder mystery. No. Lady Helena Investigates gave me the craziest plot line I've ever read in an entire book ever. So there's 2 murder mysteries, but she's not actively investigating any of them. She just kind of stumbles on to answers. So the beginning of the book, she starts off widowed, and it's slowly revealed that her husband was poisoned and then drowned to death.
What?
By a father-daughter duo who were trying to protect their secret that they are having an incestuous child together.
What?
Just let that one sink in. And the daughter learned how to poison from Lady Helena's mother, who is now suffering dementia. And near the end of the book, Lady Helena, through encoded messages and watercolor paintings, figures out that Lady Helena's mother killed her father.
Wow.
There's also supposed to be a romance storyline. It's one of the worst. Like it's like the least important thing there. He at the last minute finds her crying over her dead husband's grave, and he's like, "Hey, I have to go to France. I kind of technically maybe have a wife. We'll talk about it later. But I love you. Peace out." And that is the book. That is the book.
What was the title?
Lady Helena Investigates.
Huh.
It's a series.
It's
the first
well, it
book
would
in a
have to be. There's still the whole France plot line to resolve, apparently.
yes.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna add that to my list.
It
It's gotta be better than Shadow and Bone Book 2.
yes. Yes. Um I I was frustrated in the first half because I was like, why do I think that this is the answer? Because I felt like I had figured out the whole father-daughter thing, and I was like, this isn't the answer. I'm reading too much into this, and it was the answer. I was like, ooh, that didn't want that on my head. Um, but then there's also like a lot of it that's really well written, and the mother had a lot of rationale to kill the father, and so it was very much a supporting women's wrongs type situation. I was like laughing hysterically at just this revelation of like, no, he kind of deserved it. Like, dang, wow, that because you were planning that death for 10 years. Okay, you learned an entire craft to kill your husband. Wow,
Dedication,
dedication.
a hustle.
Palpatine level.
Yes.
The long play for sure. Wow.
Yes.
The longest con. Okay, Carey, recommendation.
Yeah. I don't have anything as good as that. Um,
Sorry.
but I have started watching this show that it only went off the air in like 7 years ago. Parks and Recreation, man. Here's the deal. I wholly missed that show when it was on the air, and I just happened to catch like a rerun of it. And the next thing I know, I'd seen like 3, 4, 5 episodes, and I was like, this thing is freaking cool. I think because I tried watching The Office, Michael Scott just sort of turned me off. And so, from everything I understand, the first season of Parks and Recreation was basically Amy Poehler basically playing Michelle Scott sort of
Mhm.
character, right? And that did not work. And then they took the second season and they retooled it and made her like a capable person who just happened to have these earnest quirks, which helped the show tremendously. Fantastic cast, great chemistry. I think it's 7 seasons. Here's the crazy part. I've probably seen like maybe 5 or 6 episodes from each season, sort of popping around. You know how it happens on syndication. But I watched the two-part finale yesterday. And like I said, I have not even seen the entire series. Those final 2 episodes was probably the best finale I've ever seen on television. And I'm nowhere near as invested as most people are who've watched the entire series. It was just fantastically done, great writing, great cast, great characters. So yeah, I'm just watching the show that's been off the air for 7 years that people have probably watched like way more than I have. But that is what I'm watching now. Fantastic show, having fun.
I need to rewatch that show because I loved it. I really did. And I loved it without even liking the main ship, which is kind of atypical for me. But
Are you talking about the main ship? Are we
is it a
talking
spoiler to
about?
tell you? You've watched everything,
Well, no,
right?
no, 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 no. I didn't know if you were talking about Ron and Leslie, who are like absolutely like, even it's not a romantic ship, but that's my ship for sure. I thought you talk. Are you talking
Ron and
about like?
Leslie, 100 out of 10. Loved them. What I didn't like was Leslie and Ben. That, to me, I never
Oh,
got the romance there.
well, no, that's just sort of something I have to deal with till I get to like Leslie and Ron scene. So yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it's like
Okay,
okay,
we're on the same
what do
page
I
then.
have? Yeah, yeah. What do I have to do to get to a Leslie and Ron scene, or what do I have to do to get to a Tom and is it Retta? Is that her name? What's
Yes.
Donna? Yeah. What do I?
Donna.
Or,
Donna
yeah,
Meadle.
yeah. Or Andy and April. Just get
Yes.
me to those scenes. Give me all those. And yeah, if you want to throw in some like Ben and Leslie at the end for like basically being sort of the straight men, all right, I'll take it. So yeah.
I loved Andy and April. Um, okay, so I was talking about the show the other day, and I was talking about the finale. or what in my head was the finale of the show. And I was talking to my brother-in-law, and he was like, I don't know what you're remembering, but that did not happen. So I think I have like made up a finale in my head for Parks and Recreation, because I watched it. Like I watched it live. Like I was a live viewer of that show back then. But memory, like first thing to go, apparently, because however I think that show ended, it didn't. And I apparently am going to get the opportunity to watch it as if it was the first time.
Wow. Well, that's one of the benefits of getting older, right?
Right.
Talking about me, not you.
I also am getting older, It's thank you, Bishop, for attacking my feet. Well, my cat has decided to tell me that it's time to give him a snack. So I think that means I've gone overtime on tonight's live. I appreciate your patience, not just with that, but also with the technical issues we all got here in the end. And thank you for your recommendations for this upcoming week.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Guess take it easy.
If anybody wants to go chat with Carey or Kate about their thoughts, fight with them about their opinions, information's in the description down below. We will see you all in 2 weeks to chat about the Love is Blind finale, Mysterious Benedict Society, the Andor finale, and maybe even the Handmaid's Tale finale. Just a lot of finales between now and then. Bye!